What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. Just got out of seeing one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs, and I'm thrilled beyond words to report that the movie did not disappoint. One of the ingredients contributing to my joy was seeing it at the Alamo Drafthouse, where if you don't have one of those theaters nearby, you're missing out because they have a strict policy of no cell phones, no talking, and no late entries. They even have a setup where if somebody's on their cell phone or talking during the movie, you can just put up a little note and have that person ejected from the theater with no refund. But even cooler was how before the movie started, they showed a little documentary or a video essay about Wes Anderson's filmography and his career, and they also had a little documentary about all of his Japanese influences that helped inform his approach to making this particular movie. Before the movie even started, they had us participate in a little stunt where they passed out this blue serum in a vial to everybody in the theater, and they had us all pose for a picture that they could send to Wes Anderson. I'm not quite sure why we became their guinea pigs. In any case, it was fun to pose for the picture. But for people out there who might not be familiar with the premise of Isle of Dogs, it's basically a concept that came to Wes Anderson that's half inspired by the stop-motion holiday specials by Rankin and Bass back in the 60s and 70s. But there's also a heavy dose of Akira Kurosawa in this, particularly some of the music from Seven Samurai. While there are a lot of different people who received a story by credit on this movie, including Roman Coppola, Jason Schwartzman, and Kunichi Nomura, in the end, this is a Wes Anderson movie. So in spite of the fact that we're in wildly different terrain than any previous Wes Anderson movie, if you want the Wes Anderson experience with all the symmetry and the incredible ensemble acting, and the very funny, very candid dialogue that he is known for, you're absolutely going to get 100% a giant Wes Anderson experience. It's probably too early for me to rank it with the rest of his movies, but I definitely think it's in the top third of my favorite movies by Wes Anderson. And while the year is still pretty young, I have to say that right now, here we are knocking at the door of April, this is my favorite movie that I've seen so far this year. But in the interest of total candor, I've got a little bit of a personal vendetta against the state of mainstream animation in America right now when it comes to feature filmmaking. I feel like at a time where animation technique and technology has never been more superior, most of the big studios remained mired in this attitude that animation is for children, or at least for adults that still want to feel like children. I'm all for those kind of movies existing, and I'll be first in line for when Incredibles 2 gets released. However, I don't want that to be the only option at the supermarket for people who like animation. And here we have Isle of Dogs, a stop-motion animated movie that absolutely in no way, shape, or form is geared towards children, unless those children happen to be insanely cool. I come from an enormous family, and I have a lot of brothers and sisters who are still in their teenage years, as well as a lot of nieces and nephews. So in no way, shape, or form am I anti-kids, but I feel like sometimes kids should be expected to either shut up and grow up and come along for the ride, or just get left at home. And Isle of Dogs at no point tries to condescend to a 4-year-old sensibility or temperament. Although I will say this, the children and the dogs in this movie have more heart and humanity, probably than any other characters you're gonna see in another movie this year. The stop-motion animated movies that have inspired Wes Anderson's stop-motion films, Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, very clearly were geared toward a very young sensibility, so I'm not trying to write off those movies at all. But Isle of Dogs is so much more ambitious and has so much more depth and has so much more feeling and so much more maturity than the majority of animated movies that come out these days. Wes Anderson really erupted onto the filmmaking scene when I was in college with Bottle Rocket and Rushmore. I mean, as an undergrad, I was the perfect target audience for his sensibility, his style of filmmaking. And I still feel like those first 3 movies of his are very tough to beat. I mean, Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and The Royal Tenenbaums. He was on this insane trajectory, and I knew it couldn't last. And I worried a couple years after that with movies like Darjeeling Limited, whether or not he would start to repeat himself or become self-indulgent. But I noticed that with Fantastic Mr. Fox moving forward, he really seems like with every film, he's trying to experiment and push his limits. He's not going to rest on the successes of the past. He never stops reaching and innovating, while at the same time, he still makes movies that are unmistakably his. Wes Anderson is going to be turning 50 years old in May of next year, and I think now we can safely say, given his body of work from Bottle Rocket through Isle of Dogs, he's easily one of the most imaginative filmmakers alive today. It's hard enough to make one good movie. It's incredibly hard to have a good 10-year run. But here we are 20 years into his career, and Wes Anderson is showing absolutely no signs of slowing down. If someone were to say Isle of Dogs is his strongest, most ambitious film to date, I might not necessarily agree with it, but I have no problem with that statement. There is so much in Isle of Dogs to enjoy. But what's really cool about seeing Wes Anderson work with stop-motion animation is that it allows him complete and total meticulous control over every detail in the frame. I mean, Wes Anderson is borderline OCD when it comes to his use of symmetry and his obsession with little details. I mean, he really loves to fill the frame like a large 2.35:1 painting. But with stop-motion animation, nothing is going to be in the frame unless you place it there. But what's really cool about this movie is that it's not just all about symmetry. He employs split screen really well. He employs great depth of field. And I would argue that some of the most striking shots of the movie do not employ that classic Wes Anderson symmetry, which I think, while beautiful, sometimes he has relied on it a little bit too much in films of the past. And while this screenplay that Wes Anderson has cooked up is definitely one of his most intricate and complex screenplays he's ever come up with, at the core of it is basically a story about love, the love between a person and their pet. And I would say every single scene in this movie is just as imbued with this overwhelming love of dogs, as well as the overwhelming love of dogs for humans. As I was walking back from this movie, it's about 9:15 here in New York, and I kept bumping into people walking their dogs. And I don't think I'll ever be able to look at dogs the same way ever again. Every single dog I saw, no matter what their shape or size was, I started projecting all these voices and personalities onto them that I ordinarily would not. Because while I'm always amazed by Wes Anderson's technical expertise, it seems like the older he gets, the better he gets at actors. He's always been good with his actors, but he's become particularly good at assembling some of the finest cast that you're going to see in any movie in any given year. I mean, the cast of this movie includes, but is not limited to, Bryan Cranston, Ed Norton, Bob Balaban, Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum. I mean, they're basically kind of the stars of the movie as Chief, Rex, King, Boss, and Duke, and they're absolutely fucking amazing. But you have Greta Gerwig delivering arguably the best performance of her career. She's absolutely incredible. You got Frances McDormand, you got Scarlett Johansson, you got Harvey Keitel, F. Murray Abraham, you even got Yoko Ono in there. And as I was watching the movie, frequently I was thinking to myself, what if Wes Anderson never made another live-action movie again? Because animation needs more filmmakers like Wes Anderson. What I would like to see happen for animation is for it to stop being its own side category from the rest of Hollywood films. Like when you look at the Academy Awards, you've got your Best Picture nominees, and then you got your Best Animated Film nominees. And I think that's a huge mistake. Animated movies and live action movies should be nominated right alongside each other. And that has happened in the past with movies like Beauty and the Beast or Spirited Away. But while in France and certain countries in Eastern Europe and in Japan, animation is celebrated and revered and loved and looked up to, it seems like for whatever reason in America, for as long as I can remember, when it comes to feature films, they are thought of as entertainment for children, even if on TV, some of the most groundbreaking, intelligent social satire of the last 30 years has taken place in the world of animation. I've never been able to fully understand that disconnect, why adult animation thrives on television and then just dies on the vine in the theater. But when it comes to its depiction of Japan, this is kind of an imaginary Japan, much like how Royal Tenenbaums was an imaginary New York. I mean, it had things like the 375th Y, like buildings that do not exist, or how the Grand Budapest Hotel was kind of like a 20s, 30s, and 40s movie, all kind of stirred into the same pot. I mean, Wes Anderson is not trying to recreate reality. It's all pure fantasy. But some of the Japanese details are absolutely incredible. Case in point, all the humans speak Japanese and there are no subtitles. Like, we are basically expected to understand what is happening through pure visual storytelling, which is great because that's as cinematic as it gets, but also just the emotion of the characters. And there are certain scenes that absolutely blew my mind. There's this one quick sequence and it's so simple, but it just shows somebody preparing a dinner and they're preparing sushi and they're preparing octopus and a couple of different things. But you know, Wes Anderson is famous for those overhead shots looking down where somebody's like spinning a book and checking it out of a library and doing things like that. I mean, Wes Anderson loves that stuff. But when it comes to the preparation of a meal, that style is perfect. As we see like the tentacles and the fish wiggling, being chopped up in these perfect little geometric slices and perfectly arrayed and displayed. It seems like he was just acting like a sponge and absorbing as many different elements of Japanese culture as humanly possible. And if you're a dog lover, I feel like this movie is going to easily push out Best in Show. It's everybody's favorite movie about dogs. And if you're not a dog lover, what's wrong with you? But what's great is that no matter how savvy or laconic or mature the dialogue might be from the dogs, they always remain dogs. At one point, Bryan Cranston's giving a lecture to the rest of his pack about how if you're hungry, kill something and eat it. And if you're sick, lie down and nap for a while. And then he lectures one of them. He's like, stop licking that wound. And he kind of looks at his paw in a really guilty fashion. But all their mannerisms and the way they walk and the way they behave, it's always very dog-like, even if they're having these incredibly sophisticated conversations. Like they're obsessing over their favorite snacks, or they're looking for girls in heat. Or if you're the Oracle, played by the great Tilda Swinton, she's the only dog who's capable of understanding television, so her job is basically always to watch the news. And because she is able to watch the news and understand the gist of what is happening, everybody thinks she's just some great fortune teller, or she has the ability to see the future. But her character is absolutely hysterical. I hope Tilda Swinton and Wes Anderson basically work together until their time on this earth is drawn to a close. And the kid who plays Atari, I've never seen him in anything before, but his name is Koyu Rankin. While he's a very small child, he's like the perfect embodiment of like the samurai spirit. If you're a fan of Akira Kurosawa movies from the 50s and early 60s, movies like The Hidden Fortress and Yojimbo, it seems like Koyu Rankin has done everything in his power to basically become like a little miniature Toshiro Mifune. He's inventive, he's brave, he's loyal, he's loving, and best of all, he has this chunk of metal sticking out of his skull the whole movie. I mean, this is a kid who goes through hell and high water to find his best friend, and he's got bruises all over his feet and bruises all around his face. This is not a sweet and cuddly little kids movie that you show to 4-year-olds. This kid is an absolute warrior. And even though I would never associate adventure movies or science fiction with Wes Anderson, he's actually kind of in a weird, sly way given us the best adventure story we're likely to see all year. Although I'm hoping Infinity War blows all of our minds. So while I'd have to give it some good, long, hard thought to figure out where I rank Isle of Dogs, like I said before, I definitely rank it toward the top. Whether or not it's better than or worse than Fantastic Mr. Fox, I really need to see it again to say with any confidence. My favorite Wes Anderson movie probably remains Royal Tenenbaums if I'm just going to judge his movies solely by the number of times that I've seen them. I'm looking at his filmography right now, and I saw Grand Budapest Hotel once, loved it, but only saw it once. I saw Moonrise Kingdom only once, loved it, but only saw it once. And maybe that's just a sign of the fact that I'm getting older and I spend less time watching movies on repeat. But when Royal Tenenbaums, I remember when that movie came out, saw it in the theater, but I got my hands on a widescreen VHS when I was going around as an Academy screener in LA. And I sat down one weekend, and I think I watched Royal Tenenbaums 3 or 4 times just in one weekend. But I'll definitely be returning to the Alamo Drafthouse to watch this movie many more times. My hope is that this movie just becomes a wild success and shows that there is an audience for and an appetite for animated movies that are not just about talking animals growing up and things like that. I've seen 100 million of them. I don't need to see that formula pretty much ever again. I'm an absolute freak for animation, and I need more animated movies with this kind of soaring ambition and creativity in my life. So thank you, Wes Anderson. Thank you for remaining one of the best filmmakers of your generation. I hope Wes Anderson continues to go strong for another 20 years. And I can't wait to see how the rest of the diehard Wes Anderson fan base reacts to this movie. Something tells me they're going to be absolutely delighted. So thank you so much for watching my review. I really appreciate it. Please consider giving my channel a subscribe. If you want to hunt me down, please do so on Twitter @ColeBrax. And I'm sure I'll be back at y'all over the course of the weekend with some more reviews. So thanks as always for watching my channel. I really appreciate it, and have an amazing weekend.